This is a comic review of, or fanzine review I should say, of Ali Sloper, or Sloper. I'm never really certain how to say it. Now this is issue 4, and it came out in 1977, so I've got a lovely cover there, so I'm just going to, and there's the back. So, Ali Sloper, first British comic hero, 1867. You've got lovely Al Williamson there. There's also a little bit of talking about Lucca. And then it's a weird mix of old and new in this magazine. So, yes, number 4, volume 1, January 1977. And this is Denis Gifford Creative Comics. Oh, he's based in London. Right, so you've got this thing. I love this picture here. You've got Maggie Thatcher, you've got various Michael Foot, etc., various politicians, Callaghan, of course, etc., all being knocked over at the front there by Ali Sloper. So you've got this one, Pagan. Now, I thought when I first saw this, I thought, oh, this artwork. I thought I know who that artist is. However, it's not. John Richardson. However, it's really quite a nice little story. Pagan. It's a very of its time, of that period, and obviously it's a science fiction space opera sort of thing. Now you've got this one. This is very unusual. The Bunter Brothers. Now, it's got the style of old-fashioned, but I somehow suspect this is not actually of the period, you know, like 1930s, 1940s, or maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I really would have to say I don't know, but it is quite unusual. It's got that style, but I think that's modern. Just not obviously of 1977 anyway. But it's also got this, A Feast of Frank Richards. This is Yaroo, Exit Bunter, featuring never before published. It's obviously got a little 50 years of Billy Bunter. Obviously got a little bit of by Denis Gifford. And then The Bushwhacker. Obviously fairly up to date. Now, weirdly, it doesn't include any details about, oh, it does, right at the end, tucked away, hardly saw that, Derek Duff at the end. Actually, it's a really quite nicely drawn Western. I quite like that. Westerns are very unusual in British comics, what UK comics, what do you want to call it, British comics. Now this is more sort of, you've got nostalgia comics, and you've got Dot and Carrie, and you've got this introduction to them there. You've got there, and then you've got some comic strips, and these obviously are ye-olde strips from, well, 1930s, I wouldn't like to say, 1920s, but you've got a number of strips. Weirdly, the numbering system is very odd. And you've got obviously the guy's name, and I can't make that out at all, so I'm going to say his name later when I get to the little article about it. And you've got Dot and Carrie. Now, this is from the World Encyclopedia of Comics, really brilliant book. And you've got obviously a photo there of, quick on the draw, Horrobin, J.F. Horrobin, Orbin, maybe. This is apparently BBC TV show, Clock Summer, in with Horrobin, in 9th of April, 1938. Wow. That is amazing. So sort of, see the drawing there he's just doing. That's pretty cool. So you've got a little bit about them. This is Dot and Carrie. Apparently, this strip, sort of American style, was drawn it was 1922 when it started. Dot, pretty blonde, etc., movie stardom, etc. So I think it's just lovely. So you can see there's some examples there. I just love these old comic strips, these newspaper strips. I wish there were more books of these sort of things. Unfortunately, a lot of this material is so hard to find, other than in old fanzines like this, or just occasionally you come across a collection. And there are apparently some collections, but impossible to get them. I would have thought very hard to get them, in fact, unless someone's brought out an edition of Dot and Carrie. This is 1923. 1923, Dot and Carrie again, this one. Dot and Carrie, Not Forgetting Adolphus, 1925. I expect copies are very hard to find. Got a T-shirt there, Ali Sloper, and then you've got this advert, and lots of adverts there, but you also got an advert for my favourite shop of all time, Dark They Were and Golden Eyed. and that was when they were in St Anne's Court. Now, St Anne's Court, you used to go through, and you walked through there, obviously, depending which direction you're coming from, of course. I would obviously quickly dive in on the right, you go downstairs, go in the door and walk around a bit, and then get down the stairs to the comic section. I love that section. Upstairs was all like science fiction books, etc., fanzines, books, and those sort of things, general sort of things. Downstairs, you had all the brilliance. Now, probably someone's going to put a comment on the thing saying, no, it was upstairs. But I remember it being downstairs for the comics. And I loved going there every week or so. Not the cheapest of places. I remember when it was in Berwick Street, it wasn't cheap then either. But it was always the shop that I really loved getting. I'd pick up all the latest issues of things. It's got here, the largest poster gallery in England. You know what? The poster gallery section, I do not remember particularly at all. I must have walked past posters like didn't exist. Didn't buy posters, so I probably just didn't see them. Largest selection of science fiction in the world. Interesting that. Not going to say it either way. They had quite a lot of books. And this one's quite good. The Men Behind the Boys Fiction. This is about comic cops. So you've got an article about comic cops. And wow. Something. Paper flake goes into my eye. And you've got some lovely ones there. Ivor Clue, Peggy the Pride of the Force, Ben and Bert, and Laurie and Trailer. Oh, I do remember them. And when I was looking at this earlier, I thought, you know what? I do remember those ones. Yeah. I'm certain you probably can even find more about them. But apparently they were mega, mega popular. Absolutely. But I do remember seeing those back in the day. Though some of the scenes in it probably would be slightly contentious now, maybe. However, let's go on to the next one. This one is sort of styled like an old styled one. This is Office Boy's Own. Now, of course, this is a modern thing. Annoyingly, it doesn't. It says number 2 there. You're sniffingly Philpot's bottles. That's odd. And then you've got another article here by, I assume, Denis Gifford. Doesn't say particularly. Talking about Lucca. Obviously talking about. And it's got a whole range of all the books. Jeff Hawke, love that. Mago West, monthly magazine Mago West. Don't know that one. And there, of course, Eagle, L'Adventuroso Colore. In Italian, that is. Chris Welch, Darth Annuals. Anyway, Lucca Trade Fair. Imagine there have been some really, really good. Italian dealers refused to sell comics at less than 1,000 lira, 15 bob. Interesting. I must admit, I love Italian comics. Loads and loads of Italian comics over the years. I haven't got any now. One. The Tiffany Jones one. But I've got maybe a few others. Light Years from Lucca. And he's got a lovely cartoon strip there. And it's got Jeff Jones. It's got Jack Kirby, Captain Kirby, as it says there. Des Skin, of course, a legend. Hugo Pratt, Denis Gifford himself, obviously another legend. And Lauro and a few French from Humanoids. Great. Brilliant books they brought out over the years. And then The Sniper. So you've got a little strip there. And TV Filth, which is really odd because it's the good old Grundy interviews that he did on the TV. Bill Grundy. And Sex Pistols, where they were swearing. And of course, that was the legendary moment where punk rock really took off. Though, of course, it was going before that. But it was... remember back in 76, that sort of period. 75, obviously, the Sex Pistols starting. But this is clear, so this is of the time. The Sex Pistols really became, because of God Save the Queen, Anarchy in the UK, of course, Pretty Vacant, Holiday in the Sun, etc. And of course, The Clash, Damned, etc. All those sort of things. But it was a lovely little comic strip with TV Filth there, which is slightly out of place in a magazine about Alice, but I suppose in many ways not, because, of course, Alice Sloper of the time was probably that sort of, the troublemaker or whatever of the Victorian world. I assume that was an interpretation of I think he was certainly slightly the outsider, and I guess the Sex Pistols sort of fitted in with that thing. And this is great as well. Superman, and you've got Alice Sloper by Jack Kirby. Wow. And if you were interested in even more stuff about Victorian, after reading the magazine, obviously clearly influenced by the Victorians, you've got Victorian Comics by Denis Gifford. And this, apparently, you can find copies. I have looked. The copies do exist. I have to say, I'm not that mega interested in. I've got a number of books, reference books, that I've seen with all these old comics. They're okay. It's like one of those things where you want 1 or 2 issues at most, and after that you think, not really. It's not really my cup of tea. So this has got the funny wonder. I can't make that out. Obviously, no. 1896, Tom Brown. And it brings back characters, forgotten figures of fun, Ali Sloper, Choky Bill, Airy Alf, and Bouncing Billy. I have to say, other than the first one, I've never heard of any of those. Probably back in my mind, maybe. The Wonder, obviously Wonder comic, or Wonder is taken to Queen Victoria there. And the Larks. And you've got George Allen and Unwin in Museum Street, good old Museum Street, obviously just very close to the British Museum. Love that. Obviously where Comic Showcase was. No, it wasn't Comic Showcase. Gosh, knew it was one of them. Comic Showcase was down in Charing Cross Road, as well as elsewhere. But Gosh was, of course, then back then. Though probably wasn't back in 1977. That's a bit too early. Gosh was a little bit later. However, completely off subject of this brilliant magazine. Getting off onto nostalgia about comic shops is a really bad idea. But this is what this magazine's about. Nostalgia. I love this. It was really not one I would have normally bought, but I thought, you know what, I want to learn a little bit about Ali Sloper. I don't think I learned much about him. However, it's still great to get this magazine, fanzine. Brilliant sort of thing. So totally recommended. Little magazine here.